Suddenly, John Kasich is Mr. Popularity.
From the Patel studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Bill Cohen, State House correspondent for Ohio Public Radio, Joe Hallett, senior editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Bob Clegg, Republican strategist, and Janetta King, president of Innovation Ohio.
First, President Obama rode the Obama-Kasich recovery in Ohio to a win here and re-election. Now, Governor Kasich seems to be riding the Kasich-Obama recovery as his approval ratings climb. Look how far he has come. In July 2011, less than 2 years ago, only 35% of Ohioans approved of John Kasich's performance. 50% disapproved. Now those numbers are completely reversed. 53% approve what the governor is doing and 32% disapprove. Joe Hallett, can you ever recall a governor's approval rating swinging that much, that fast?
No, but I do recall 2 years ago, Bob Bennett, the Ohio Republican Party chairman, said, you may not like him now, but you're going to love him in 2 years. I don't know that we love him, but his approval rating was, for the first 2 years, steadily 40%, which was pretty horrible. And now it's not rocket science. I mean, our unemployment rate is a 1.2% below the national average. The economy is recovering, and with that comes Kasich's recovery.
Ronald Reagan had the same kind of situation in the early 80s. We had a terrible economy. He came in. He had to do some things to get it fixed. He did. His approval ratings were in the toilet when he started, but 2 years later, he was looking real good. The unemployment rate had come down. Inflation had come down, and of course, he easily won re-election.
Janetta, does that give Democrats pause that maybe they can't beat him in 2 years?
It doesn't give Democrats pause because all of the other data in the poll is certainly worth looking at. There's a disconnect between his approval rating and his re-elect number, which is only at 56%. And so, as you all know, the rule of politics is when that number is under 50%, that's a danger sign. People often get concerned. And also, when you see the head-to-head with four candidates, several are unknown, they all come within 10 percentage points of Governor Kasich. So I think that there's a lot of hopefulness in that poll as well.
Bob, is he peaking too early?
No, I think...
Has he peaked?
No, I don't think he's peaked. I think as we go along and the economy's getting better here in Ohio, I think it's only going to go up more. I think, you know, he had to do a lot of things. We had an $8 billion deficit when he walked in the door as governor. He had a lot of things he had to do, a lot of problems he had to take care of, a lot of the things people didn't like. But, I mean, he did it without raising taxes. And now I think people are starting to see the benefits of it, and that's why the approval rating has gone up.
The thing that I saw in this poll was the Senate Bill 5. What's Senate Bill 5? Yeah. Joe, that's long gone and
well, as
out of our
Bob
memories.
said, you know, he got the unpopular things out of the way early. Senate Bill 5 crashed and burned. He had to come in and balance the budget, which had an $8 billion hole. He managed to do that without a tax increase. But, you know, he also made some pretty unpopular cuts to local governments and education. One thing you have to look at is if you can imagine in October of 2014, what the unemployment rate will be in Ohio, and also what President Obama's popularity rating will be, you'll have a good idea whether or not John Kasich can win re-election. My guess is that Bob's right. The unemployment rate will still be low. The economy will be perking along. And I would think that at that time, President Obama is going to be more unpopular than he is today.
Union folks, they're not going to forget Senate Bill 5. But, you know, the Democrats aren't just union folks. Some of those other folks may come over. This latest poll showed 17% of Democrats agree Kasich deserves re-election, and a plurality of women agree Kasich, at this point, deserves re-election. That's interesting because usually the Democrats count on women as one of their key constituencies.
Well, over the last couple of years, though, since the Senate Bill 5 fight, Kasich has really kept a lower profile. I think that a lot of this changes now that we are in the budget debate, now that he is out there putting more policies on the table, that several of which are unpopular as well. And I don't think that these numbers
among Republicans. I mean, Medicaid expansion is not going to turn off many Democrats. You know, trying to tax lawyers and public relations firms and lobbyists is not going to turn off rank and file Democrats.
Yeah, but some of the Democrats are very concerned regarding the tax shift and the burden that is now going to be placed on middle income, lower income folks. And again, these tax policies that primarily benefit the wealthy. That's a huge concern for progressives, and I think that's going to play out. And as people learn about what's in this budget, I think that these numbers are going to go south for Kasich.
I tell you, anytime a politician is taking fire from both sides, he's got to be doing something right. And people like, especially independents, like to see that there's disagreement even within your own party on some of your ideas. So I think in the end, that's probably going to help them.
It's March, Joe. We should start to see Democrats get off the dime and say whether or not they're going to run. Ed Fitzgerald from Cleveland being first on the list, Tim Ryan, a congressman from Youngstown. When do we start seeing these folks say yes or no?
I think within weeks. I think that Fitzgerald's going to go. He's doing all the things he needs to do. He's got 28 county rubber chicken dinners he's speaking at. He has been more critical of Kasich in recent days. I don't think Ryan will do it. I think he's got too good of a gig in Congress right now. He's on the Finance Committee. He's gaining seniority. He'll have that seat as long as he wants. The wild card, I think, is Rich Cordray. And we should know in, I think, about the second week of March whether or not he will be confirmed. It doesn't look like he will be. There are some folks who are saying if he's not, he'll still serve the year and maybe look for another appointment, a federal judgeship or something from Obama. Who knows, though? He's always wanted to be governor.
He's the closest among the group in this poll challenging John Kasich, but 80% do not know who Ed Fitzgerald is statewide in this poll. So that's the hurdle that Democrats face, is perhaps the strongest candidate has such a large unknown.
But still within 10 points
Yeah.
of the governor. And that's part of, getting on the campaign trail and, getting visibility and going out to those party dinners. And there's time to do that. Looking back at some of Kasich's numbers this time 4 years ago, he came a long way in polling and, got his visibility numbers up and, ended up winning.
But I don't think it's really going to matter that much who the Democrat is. I think the election is going to be a referendum on Kasich. So if the economy is bad, it's the Democrat. If the economy is good, Kasich wins.
See, I think it's going to be more Obama. I think it's going to be like 2010 was, where you're in your 6th year of the Obama administration. People are going to want to send a message. They do it in their state elections and their congressional elections, I think.
All right. While the poll shows that Ohioans like John Kasich's overall performance, they are not too fond of some of his proposals. Quinnipiac found that a plurality of people don't like his plan to offset cuts in the income tax by imposing new sales taxes. When it comes to those new sales taxes on services, a majority of people surveyed don't like them. Ohioans do like the governor's plan to expand Medicaid. Even a majority of Republicans surveyed are with the governor on that one. Bill Cohen, how do Ohioans like John Kasich's performance but don't like two of his major policy initiatives?
Well, as we hinted before, I don't think they're judging Kasich on his budget, his tax shift proposals, for example. I think they're judging him on the general economy, the fact the unemployment rate has gone down from almost 11% to below 7%. They have a general good feeling about the economy. I think that's what it is. I think most Ohioans don't really know that much about the tax shift. The other thing is the question in this Quinnipiac poll, when they asked people, they could have said, the main question, they could have said the governor wants to broaden the sales tax and cut the income tax even more, so there's an overall tax cut. But they didn't say that. They left that vague. And I think you could have gotten the numbers a little bit higher for Kasich's tax shift plan if you would have mentioned that. Of course, you could get them higher or lower depending on what information you put in there.
But you're the communicator, Bob. Is it hard to get that message out that this is an overall tax cut?
Yes, and what this shows is people don't want their taxes increased. And I mean, they just don't. And when you're asked a question, what do you think about expanding the sales tax to these services that didn't have a tax? And they don't like it. I mean, all they see is more tax dollars that they have to pay.
And I think the disconnect between these two polls is that when you're polling just in a couple of weeks since the budget was dropped, I don't think Ohioans really know what's in the budget. I don't think they really understand the impact on them. Now, give it 4 or 5 months, I think that they probably will. They'll start looking at how schools fare, how the tax shift plays out, what new taxes they're going to be paying. And I think that that's going to be a real game changer.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I think that two of the big planks in Kasich's budget are in danger of going down. One is the whole, and frankly, they both make sense to me. The sales tax expansion seems fair. I mean, I think they need to carve out some exemptions. And the Medicaid expansion seems like a good thing to do. Most governors are finally coming around to that, Republican governors. But it's in danger because if you look at the poll numbers here, even though a majority of Ohioans support the Medicaid expansion, it is losing terribly among Republicans, 65 to 24. That's all that matters to this Republican legislature because these districts are gerrymandered so safely for them that they are only answerable to fellow Republicans and not to the broader electorate.
So are lawmakers looking at this poll? You mentioned the Medicare. How about the fracking tax? We didn't put it up on the screen, but 60% of Ohioans support the tax on natural gas and oil drillers.
Politicians look at all polls at all times. So, yes, they're looking at these numbers. The Democrats have to make a decision here, too. They obviously want the expansion of the Medicaid, so they have to decide, are they going to back the governor on the budget, maybe even though they don't like some other parts of it? Because if they want to have the expansion of Medicaid, they may need to do that because they may be able to get enough Republicans to go with the Democrats to pass it overall.
Do legislators look at this poll, as Joe's hinting here, the Republicans, legislators, they're beholden to the Republican voters, and they've got pretty safe districts. Same with the Democrats. So I don't think, in general, polls like this have all that much effect on either party.
And I think specifically on the severance tax, the Republican legislators may look at this poll, but they're also looking at campaign contributions. I mean, that's just a fact. And that the oil and gas industry, they do contribute to re-elect these folks. And
Speaking of campaign contributions, the Ohio Bar Association has come out against the sales tax on legal services. Big surprise there, but Kasich knew this was coming. How much of an impact will it have on lawmakers and his chances of reconsidering this?
I think that, there's the Bar Association, there's CPAs, there's a lot of different groups that are out there that aren't real happy about this. And I think you're going to start seeing some messages out there in the public that's going to try to explain their side of this thing.
Kasich knew this was coming, which is why the day he introduced and unveiled this proposal, he said, now, groups are going to come out against this, but they are special interest groups, and if they win, you lose. In other words, if we can't do the sales tax broadening, the income tax cut will have to shrink.
The Bar Association says that it's unfair to tax people who need a lawyer, especially low-income folks who need a lawyer. They also say, this might resonate, is that if you tax lawyers and legal fees, it will raise the cost of doing business in Ohio. Aren't those two legitimate reasons to maybe stay away from this?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. The other factor for law firms, particularly those on the borders, Cincinnati, Toledo, is they can move across the border and not have to pay these sales tax in Michigan and Indiana and Kentucky. So there is a factor of job losses there. I don't know how significant they'll be. And, of course, the Bar Association did raise the specter of criminal defendants having to pay a sales tax and it potentially being unconstitutional.
But for lawyers, who are charging $200 an hour to say, if you add 5%, this is going to be very bad, I think it's tough when you're charging that much. For the main service, not the tax.
There are some serious compliance issues. Now businesses who have never been taxed before are going to have to remit a sales tax. And so you are going to have a lot of increase in the cost of doing business just by setting up those systems. And then, of course, that gets passed on to consumers, which is not good for the economy.
Do you see a point? You mentioned that CPAs, there's going to be a line of folks who don't want these service sales taxes. Can they start pulling out one or two? Can we say, okay, all right, we're not going to tax the lawyers. Okay, we're not going to tax the CPAs. Sure. We're not going to tax the laundry mats.
Yeah, they can put in and take out groups at will, but the problem they got is it's got to be balanced. So if you're pulling one group out, you're pulling the expected dollars from that group too. So you've got to make that up from somewhere else because we got to have a balanced budget in the end. And that's the problem.
And I think it is tough for the legislature to do that because Governor Kasich desperately wants this income tax decrease because it's something he campaigned on last time. He feels like he has to deliver. You start unraveling the sales tax increases that are going to pay for that becomes a problem, and they're going to be denying their governor a significant win.
this sales tax issue has been full employment for lobbyists. So if Kasich keeps in the lobbyist sales tax, then the state will gain a lot of money.
Well, they're all lobbying now without having to pay sales tax. So not strike while the iron is hot. Ohio government workers, as well as Central Ohio organizations and businesses who rely on federal government funding, are asking, okay, now what? The sequester deadline has arrived with no deal to cut the deficit. An automatic 8 to 10% federal budget cut begins today. Mayor Coleman, Ohio State University, the Defense Accounting Center at Whitehall, other organizations all predict consequences. How dire those consequences are, well, that's in the eye of the beholder. Bob Clegg, have you ever run a school levy campaign?
Yeah.
Because this sounds an awful lot like a school levy campaign.
Yeah,
We're going to cut out
a
busing.
fire levy campaign. Yeah, where if you don't do something, there's dire consequences. I think the public, though, on this instance, is not quite buying it. I think the president went a little bit over the top on it. When he started predicting all these things, and a lot of his cabinet officials were predicting problems like the education secretary, and then come to find out, well, it really wasn't going to be maybe quite as bad. We don't know. All I know is supposedly it's only 2.5 cents for every dollar the federal government spends, which does not sound a lot to me. I think we have a government. President Obama wants to have a bigger government, so this is the last thing he wants to see happen. But
he's advocated cuts. He says he wants a balanced approach. He wants cuts plus.
Well, he wants more revenue because he wants to keep things and make them grow. But let's remember, he and his incoming Treasury Secretary Jack Lew came up with this idea, this brilliant idea.
And the Republicans signed off on it.
Yes, but
Okay.
they came up with it.
All right.
And what he did was he decided 1.5 years ago he wanted to do a game of chicken with the House Republicans.
And the chicken said, let's play two.
Yeah, and the chicken said, let's play two. And guess what? They thought that the House Republicans were going to blink because of the defense cuts, and they didn't. So now he sits there and says, how dare they play a game of chicken with me when he started it?
All right. So where does this go from here? I mean, do we start seeing flight delays at Port Columbus? If we don't see them, does it backfire on the president?
I mean, there are real consequences here. They may not all hit on day one, which I guess is maybe tomorrow, but yeah, there are real consequences. We're going to see significant cuts in education. We're going to see cuts in Head Start. We're going to see things that can impact real people. About 160 million would be pulled out of Ohio's economy if these federal workers are in fact furloughed. And so I do think that, you know, there's the back and forth. But what we do know through polling is that the American people do agree with the president. They also want a balanced approach. They see some of these loopholes for jets and for vacation homes. And they think that, yeah, we could probably get some of those resources to fill this hole there instead of having to cut education and Head Start and those services.
Why can't we figure this out, Joe?
Well, voters are they're just schizophrenic on things. I mean, they do like the president's approach more than the Republican Congress's approach. They are willing to increase their taxes. They also want cuts. But then when you say, well, what are you willing to cut? Well, they don't want to cut anything. So it's, you know, we blame the president and Congress for this, but maybe we should be blaming ourselves.
Yeah, that's where I think at least this gives us a good dose. If there are going to be these cuts, it'll give us a dose of some economic reality that yeah, there is going to have to be some cuts, and we are going to feel it. Even if we do tax the rich more, that can't solve the whole problem. There are going to have to be cuts.
What happens if these cuts really turn out not to be that? When we say there are some furloughs, I mean, people lose their pay. That's going to affect them individually. But for most people, say they don't see it, they're going to say, well, 10%, you know?
Well, I think, yeah, because I think what you can do is look at what happened here in Ohio with Governor Kasich in the last 2 years. He really cut back quite a bit on local governments and even on school districts, education. And at the time, the Democrats were talking about all the dire consequences that we here in the state of Ohio would go through. And yeah, it's been, you know, governments have had to live within their means.
Or they've raised taxes.
Or they've gone to the voters and raised taxes. But bottom line, our people don't seem to be all that upset with John Kasich for the cuts that he did 2 years ago. So, you know, it could be the same thing here on the federal level, too.
But the effects of that, those are still playing out. I mean, we're just seeing right now the estate tax phase out kick in. We're seeing now, you know, additional local government cuts in this budget. So that's going to continue to play out. I think people are going to get, you know, more concerned with those cuts because it is starting to impact them as they're raising their own taxes. Over $1 billion of education levies for new money were on the ballot just in the last 2 years. And that's
And how
significant.
many of those passed? See, a lot of people are saying no. They're saying no.
Then you turn to the cut in services, and they don't like that either.
People can choose. Do they want higher taxes or do they want the cuts? That's our system, and they're making the choice.
All right. Our last topic: over the past year, the gay marriage movement has gained momentum with President Obama's endorsement. There were electoral successes in the states of Washington, Minnesota, Maine, and Maryland. Now, notable Republicans have asked the Supreme Court to overturn California's gay marriage ban. It's all given hope to gay marriage supporters here in Ohio looking to overturn the ban approved in 2004. Janetta, it seems like it's a matter of when, not if, but will it happen as soon as this November that we see a ballot initiative to overturn it?
You know, I'm not sure. It does sound like the folks who are collecting the signatures, Freedom to Marry Ohio, they are feeling very positive about having enough signatures to put it on the ballot in 2013. That said, there also needs to be a consideration. I think these are some of the conversations going on is when does it make the most sense? 13, 14? Because obviously when you put something on the ballot, you want to make sure that you are able to be successful. And a lot of money, a lot of effort goes into that. So you want to do it responsibly. Ohio certainly has come a long way since 2004. I mean, the numbers are very positive. The question, I think, posed to the supporters of this amendment is, are they good enough to win a constitutional
Sounds like
victory?
you're saying it might be a little too early.
Well, it may be, as we look at, all of the things, they may have the signatures, but then you have to look at all of the electoral dynamics. Midterm election, is it the best time to go? What would turnout be? And all of those things coming together. And those are certainly the conversations going on right now.
Two major groups, the two biggest groups in Ohio operating, Equality Ohio and the Human Rights Campaign, do think it's too early. That's why they haven't endorsed the petition drive. And they say, let's see some polls, several polls, not just one. There has been one poll that shows a majority now in Ohio supporting marriage equality, but other polls don't show that, and they're saying let's wait until we really have a good shot at winning. But the other folks are saying, look, we've waited, and one strategy they're talking about is let's do it now in an off-year election, just like the casino folks won in an off-year election. They say the turnout will be low, we'll get our own folks to the polls, and we can win this thing even this year, even though not all the polls maybe are showing a total support.
But Janetta makes a great point about timing. I mean, we saw in 2004 how motivated religious conservatives can be on this issue. And I see no reason why that whole coalition won't be energized again. My sense is that it would be better to present this to a broader electorate in a governor's year, in a race for governor in 14, rather than roll the dice now.
Are religious conservatives as motivated now, Bob, 10 years later?
Yeah, I think if it gets on the ballot, they will be. And I think it's really what everybody's been saying. I think it's it's a tough call to make. You don't know what to be honest, if they really want it to pass, they should wait until 2016 and put it on during a presidential year. That's probably their best bet for getting it passed. Because I'm not even sure in an off year like this year, it's going to be totally motivating which side can motivate their supporters the most. Next year, who knows? I think that I don't think this will affect the turnout for next year. I think the turnout for next year will be affected by the political environment at that time.
The head of Equality Ohio was telling me this week, in all 10 states where they have gay marriage allowed, they all have a civil rights law that says you can't discriminate against gay people in terms of jobs and credit and housing and so forth. And so her idea is you need that as a foundation before you go to gay marriage. But the other people are saying, if we wait till Ohio expands its civil rights law, we could be waiting a decade because Republicans who control the legislature are in no mood to do that.
And I'm not so sure there's the groundswell of conservative opposition this time. We've seen some very high-profile conservatives not only get involved in the Supreme Court case that you were talking about, but also lending their name to efforts, appearing in ads. Laura Bush, Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, all appearing on some of these PR campaigns. And I think that is a significant change from where we were a decade ago.
All right, let's get to our off-the-record final parting shots. Janetta, you're up first.
Yeah, last night the General Assembly passed a provision to change the turnpike, how it's tolled, and then also a bonding authority. And I think that's something that, while it didn't have significant opposition through the legislative process, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a liability for those who supported it.
Bob.
I think probably about 2 months from now, we're going to know definitely who the Democrat nominee is going to be against John Kasich, and I think it's going to be Betty Sutton.
Joe.
Not a chance. The Democratic nominee is going to be Ed Fitzgerald.
You think so? Mm-hmm. Richard Cordray, no challenge?
No, I don't think he'll do it. I don't think Betty Sutton will do it, and Tim Ryan won't do it. I think it's going to be
Clear sailing then. No primary. Bill.
I think Governor Kasich's proposed fracking tax is going to pass this year in some form. First, it has public support, but second of all, revenue from that kind of tax hike is going to be needed if they want to have some kind of income tax cut, because the sales tax broadening may be scaled down.
All right. And on the gay marriage front, the Supreme Court is going to consider California's ban on gay marriage, and most people expect that ruling to be pretty limited, but there's a chance that it could be a more sweeping ruling, which could wipe out Ohio's gay marriage ban, negating the need to even go to the ballot. So we'll have to watch that over the next few months. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Please check us out online. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can connect to all of that at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew here at WOSU at COSI and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.